Good evening. Hello. Today I'll be going live talking about the mystery of missing Malaysian flight MH370, which disappeared on the 8th of March in 2014. Originally, it took off from Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia and was heading to Beijing International Airport. There was 239 passengers and crew on aboard that day, and until to this day, still to this day, the full story of what exactly happened that night when it disappeared still remains unknown. So that's something. There was a multi-million-dollar search which eventually got called off in 2018. Started originally in 2014, and ever since, only about 30 pieces of debris have been found. But it's all been very minor debris. I think a wing stabilizer was found in February 2016 in Mozambique, which was verified by Australian experts. French police found a suitcase thought to be from the flight close to Reunion Island, which is just off the coast of Africa. This was in September 2015. Around 20 smaller pieces were found in October 2017, thought to be from MH370. It was tracked by Malaysian Air Force, but however, they didn't send a fighter jet to track it. But it was monitored. Its movements were monitored, however, and there's been many ways to that the authorities have tried to look to find it. But one way that has been, monumental and revolutionary has been a method developed by Richard Godfrey, a British engineer who he started the Whisper network basically, and this was basically using ham radio sets, and they send out a signal, and then they're just looking for anything that basically an aircraft would or anything else would send back a signal essentially, and then that is what would basically inform it on where it was, and that's been used in this case, and the whole route ever since it's disappeared has been charted using this method, and the Whisper network identifies a point exactly where it believes. Hey MJ, nice to see you here. The Whisper radio network identifies an exact point of coordination as to where it thinks the crash site is. This has been done, as I said previously, by bouncing radio waves off one another and using that to give a precise location. And this place hasn't even been searched yet, but hopefully they're going to start searching back. A private company will at either the end of this year or the start of next year. But it's the exact coordinates that have been given by this aero expert using this technique. Thanks, MJ. Using this technique is 33.177 degrees south and 95.300 degrees east. This is where this crash site allegedly is around 1,933 kilometers west of Perth in Australia, and it's rumored to be about 4,000 meters deep underwater. And this area is known as Broken Ridge. Hey Jamie, nice to see you in here. Hey Miggy Easy, nice to see you. And this area is known as Broken Ridge. And sadly, no one has been out there to fully search it yet. But as I previously said, there is hopes that they'll get out there soon and do it. But this area has been found by two independent studies, by the Whisper Network and also by the US government's own system that it developed, which is actually basically the technology that led to the creation of the deep web. Basically, similar type of radar technology where it kind of bouncing back kind of, and it's been logged since the early 2000s. So that's how it's able to be done. The younger, more dope Michael Caine of YouTube. That's great. Yeah. That I appreciate it. McGeezy, yeah. I try my best. I mean, I'm learning. I'm learning a few languages at the moment. I'm learning Spanish, and I'm studying the Irish language as well. So my looking at names and words that aren't English ones, I find a lot easier than most would. Still not perfect though by any means, and looking through some more information now. We get onto like the big central point of it as my theories as to what exactly happened. Right. Okay. I'm going to take you through this. Right. There's possible reasons as to what we can, what the facts are is the aircraft failed to respond to a ping at 9:15 a.m. And that it had been talking with, the control towers from in Malaysia up until that point. Possible in-flight elements is possible. There was a power interruption. That's possible. It could be a mechanical fault that caused that to happen. An unresponsive crew or hyperoxia. Hyperoxia is a lack of oxygen. This could have occurred by a stall in the engine, a glide event, e.g., a fuel exhaustion. Fuel exhaustion is easily possible as to why it ultimately went down, because it was airborne for 7 hours 38 minutes when the flight itself was only from Kuala Lumpur to Beijing is only about 5 hours. So it wasn't. That is very likely that was the reason it ultimately went down. But what we're trying to establish, what isn't known concrete. This is known concrete. What isn't known concrete, what we are going to be theorizing about, is exactly why this happened. Exactly why this happened. And I've got narrowed this down to two possible reasons, basically. Either the pilot took it, three actually. The pilot took it down purposefully. Hijackers took it down, which we'll get into more. And also, a third option, there was actually a large quantity in the cargo hold of iron, let me get it exactly right, what it was. It was a certain batteries, basically, that were in the cargo hold. And they were very, prone to explode, basically. So it's possible that they may have exploded. This is, and because they here we go. Large amount of lithium batteries were on board in the cargo hold, which can cause massive fires. It can cause massive fires, and that was this actually happened to airlines flight UPS Airlines Flight 6. That exactly an explosion of lithium batteries on board is actually, which caused a fire and ultimately brought the craft down. This is what happened. But to get more into the actual facts now, it was in a 22-minute holding pattern for seemingly no reason. A holding pattern is when it's in a fixed position, kind of gliding, and this could be for three possible reasons. Either it was the pilot was negotiating an onboard fire, which could have been caused by the lithium batteries, or negotiation with passenger hijackers, or possibly was receiving instructions from conspirators that he was working with. And we're going to get into exactly all deeper into these other two theories of the conspiracy of either the passengers or the pilots, and my reasons for highlighting these. The main one was the pilot himself. To give a profile of him, the pilot was related to a former political opposition leader within Malaysia. He was also a member of this man's, who was his relative's political party, who were in a bitter feud with the government at that time in 2014. And his relative was arrested and convicted for sodomy, which is a big crime in Malaysia. However, he felt that he had been set up. Basically, his name was tarnished to remove him as a threat to the government by, convicting him of such a heinous crime in that society's eyes, with little or no proof. And this has been given as a possible reason as to why, as to why the pilot would have crashed the plane purposefully, as a violent protest against the treatment of his relative. And that to me makes, it makes a lot of sense, because he was also known to have very anti-government views. And when the police raided his, well, they didn't raid, they searched his home for evidence, and on his flight simulator, he had actually taken the diverted path that the plane actually took after it stopped responding to the pings. So that suggests that he may have been planning all along to divert and to do that. However, it makes me wonder why, if he was to do that, there was no claim of responsibility. I suppose it was such an outrage that no group would want to claim responsibility for it. The amount of deaths that would have entailed. Another possible theory is that there was actually two Iranians on the plane that day who were traveling on false passports. And the reason, we got to remember that this plane's heading to China. So the reason Iranians may have wanted to attack would have been that they may have wanted to hijack the plane and crash it into government buildings or important buildings in China, because China has adopted quite strongly anti-Muslim, anti-Islamic policies. So it would make sense that they would attack China. I'm the same, Andre. If anyone would like to come up and share their theories or ask any questions, you're more than welcome to. And I'd love to hear from anyone, because I've been studying this case since it happened, back in 2014. So I've got massive questions. And Ocean's Infinity is they're a marine robotics company from the US, and they have recently said that they're going to be committed to resuming the search in the location that I talked about before, either this year or early next year. So that'll hopefully bring out some answers. That is some much needed answers. The main gold mine would be the black box, but that's obviously because it will still be intact. But that obviously will be like finding a needle in a haystack. Within the size of that area. The fact that he dipped his wing down towards where he grew up, it's so eerie. Yeah, that is very, very eerie. Like a total like he was doing it as a final last side off type of thing. You can interpret it that way. Honestly, who knows? It's a really, really interesting case. And this actually, that it's been proven that the plane traveled for 5 hours with no communication before finally disappearing. Likely traveling on autopilot based on movements. So it's possible that there was either a hijacking or a suicide, maybe, of the pilot, and he just let it go on autopilot. But based on the movements from the ham radio tracking signals, very complex how this is done. All the signals have been logged back from 2009, so we can know exactly where the movements was. And based on the movements, according to aerodynamics experts, yeah, it's insane. It's crazy. Yeah, based on the movement of aerodynamics expert. Hey, Wolfie, nice to see you. Based on those movements, it's insane. It's crazy that who knows exactly. I would love to hear other people's theories, but like I'm leaning towards more piece of the wing event. But the piece of the wing they have found, I don't know. Yeah, there's much debate as to why it would wash up in why it would wash up in Mozambique. which is in Africa, instead of like Perth, which is where it's a lot nearer, and which is where the tide would be, the movements of the ocean would move it towards, that's the way it moves. It would be pushed back towards Perth. So they could very well be. There was rumors at the time it happened that it may have been shot down by someone, and that they're covering it up. Basically, it may have even been shot down by the Australians, Australian Air Force, and it may be covered up, or anyone basically in that area, the Malaysians, anyone really, even the Chinese, it could have been done by. So there's a multitude of reasons. It also could have been covered up to hide incompetency, which is also a very plausible idea to save people's jobs, basically. And that wouldn't surprise me. Yeah, exactly. Just because it was verified by Australian experts doesn't mean that. Exactly. Where was the electric? Exactly. That's a very good point. It's a very, very good point. Because I suppose if it was a hijacking, they wouldn't have turned off the power. They'd have kept it on. They'd have, there's a lot of the passengers who were on the plane. They had a lot of connections. Exactly. Yeah. I was discussing that earlier. Melissa, the two Iranians who had they had fake passports. They had been involved in the Mujahideen, which is kind of like. One of them was involved in the Mujahideen, it's been proven, which was kind of bin Laden's thing before Al Qaeda. They fought the Soviets. So he had a background in that. So, and the other one was younger. The other one was 19. So he was a young man who he'd brought with him. I think it was his younger nephew. Yeah, those two were. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So those are the guys who I think, if there was a hijacking, that they were the ones who'd done it. So maybe the pilot had heard a commotion, put it into autopilot, gone out to see what's going on, and got killed. Very, very possible. They could have gone on with the box cutters, like they did, because security in Malaysia isn't like security in America. They've got it, security, obviously, but not to the stringent abilities of the US government, with all the resources we have here, or in Europe, or Australia, they just don't have those resources though. So it's a lot easier to smuggle things on. So I'm leaning towards more the hijacking from the two Iranians. And they may have not known, they may have not had, because it was a Boeing 77. It's not something that you can just kind of train to fly. Like, even if any kind of flying lessons in a smaller prop plane isn't going to prepare you for flying a massive Boeing 77, which it was. And it's very likely that they tried to, and it just failed, and they crash landed in the ocean, somewhere in the ocean, in Broken Ridge, just 1,933 kilometers west of Perth. So that's very possible. That's the theory I'm leaning towards, but I'd love to hear anyone else's. Really, really interesting in this case, and the kind of secrecy around it, kind of how we haven't had lots of full disclosure, makes me think that there is something more to it. I always thought that there was something more to it than what we're being told. Really, really interesting. And to talk more about how this is done, basically, how the radio signals work. Basically, ham radios. I'm sure many of you are familiar with them growing up, or now. They send out frequencies, and then the frequency, when it finds another one, it bounces off it, basically picks it up. So it's logged exactly it can be logged, basically its longitude and its latitude, and that's what's been done. We can go back into old records and find that the exact route that it was taking after communication had been cut off. So that's how we know that it's in Broken Ridge. Hey, Lady V, it's nice to see you. It'd be cool if one of you would like to come up and discuss this. It'd be great, because I'm not going to do too long. I'm probably only going to do another 20 minutes because MJ has her trivia night coming, and I'd like say to you all to go there afterwards and enjoy that, because it's always a good time. I love trivia. I'm the king of bar trivia, pub trivia. That's my thing. I might do a thing on here one time, like Mastermind, where like we just kind of do Mastermind, where everyone has like the topic, the case, but of cases that they've studied. Either a case or a conspiracy theory, and we'll get lots of people up to do their Mastermind, and there'll be a prize. You know what I mean? There's lots of prizes. RJ, would you like to play? Oh yeah, sure. I would love to actually. I would actually love to. I totally would. After this, I definitely would. I've always wanted to. Just all the topics you pick are always really good for me as well. Like they're always ones like it's either movies, music, like just things like that I'm pop culture. I'm just good with that. That's my thing. But it'd be really interesting. Yeah, really interesting. Yeah, and I just think with this, it's I would with this case, it's opened my eyes up to more about radio technology and about the wonders of it. Really, that even our phones can send off similar type of signals. You know what I mean? And those type of signals will be bounced back, and it'll log where we are. Approximately. So we work in, just think of it as the way your cell tower data bounces off and bounces back. That's exactly how this ham radio data was compiled and collected. It's really interesting that as well, that this just shows us what sleuths and amateurs can do, because it was amateurs who figured this whisper stuff out. It wasn't Richard Godfrey was an he is a qualified aeronautics British engineer, but he wasn't a professional at the time. He was retired, and he was working with a lot of sleuths and amateurs who gave him and helped get him the data to make that assessment. And this assessment has been made by him and the Whisper Network, as well as the US Navy's own systems, which I mentioned before. So this has been verified by two independent people about this crash site being in Broken Ridge, just off Perth, a couple of thousand kilometers off Perth. But really deep, but enough. So we probably sent down one of the Krakens, the kind of smaller submarines that are used in the Titanic movie. That's probably what's going to be sent down, and that's really good. That can a deep submersible that could very likely open the secrets as to what happened. But what is the one thing about this case that bothers you the most? I think that the authorities trying to disregard that there's any involvement of either the pilot or those two Iranians. That's what bothers me the most, MJ, and that's a really good question. Honestly, that it feels like they really don't want us looking down those avenues. So in response to that, I'm really looking down those avenues, because whenever and the thing is, it's not cranks saying this, it's actual people with great credentials who are saying this stuff. But all the authorities don't want you to think that, and anyone who was in authority, like Richard Godfrey was, is saying exactly what we think. That basically there was involvement with either the pilot or some passengers. That's what I think. Do you think the pilot was set up? It's very possible. It's very possible. I'm not saying he 100% did it, but because he was in, I think that his relative was set up because his relative was in the opposition in Kuala Lumpur at the time, and his distant relative, but he was involved in the same political party, was arrested and convicted for sodomy. I talked about this earlier, but you might have missed it. He was arrested and convicted for sodomy, which is like a big crime in Malaysia. And in his mind, his relative was set up, like you said, because he was against the government. And in places like that, corruption thrives. Not that corruption doesn't thrive here, but it's a lot more in the open there. So it seemed like he was set up with and disgraced with like one of the worst things you could be painted as over there. And to vent his anger and his frustration, he did that as a protest because he felt his whole life had been taken away from him. Because that in those societies, influence and honor is everything. You can't understate that. Influence and honor is everything, and to have that taken away, you're going to react violently. You're going to react irrationally. And that's exactly what that was. It was very irrational. Exactly, MJ, I was talking about that before earlier. The fact that his flight simulator at home, when they went to his house, and exactly the diverted path that he took, basically, that wasn't to the destination at all. It was completely off destination, which would have made no sense of him to try and do that. It made no logical sense for him to try and do that. It's absurd. It really makes no logical sense. To me, I think it was very, very possible that he could have been in cahoots with the two Iranian hijackers, that they may have been working together, and that that there was the search mission that went out to look for the airplane. They shut that transponder off also. Yeah, they did. And also the search as well was so rushed and so any of that exactly wouldn't allow any of the family. It was all kept hush hush, and they wouldn't search, and they haven't yet searched Broken Ridge. They've searched completely the wrong area, and all the experts are saying that they're searching the completely wrong area. So why is that? Why don't they want to find it? Is there a reason why they don't want to find it? But this harks back to my other theory earlier of maybe it was shot down by some military, and that's why they don't want to find it. Or maybe it was outright incompetence and they're trying to save some people their jobs. It could be a combination of those things, But the fact that I lean towards anything that they're trying to dissuade us from, and I'm sure MJ is the same, and I'm sure a lot of you in here are the same. That's the way I usually float. But I keep my mind open to everything. You have to when you're investigating. If I see something that contradicts what I think, I don't get too hung up over my theories. Yeah, I think I'm leaning towards it being shot down. I'm leaning towards it being shot down because it's on record that the Malaysian Air Force was tracking it on its radar, but they did on record send out any fighter jets. But just because they didn't on record doesn't mean that yeah. Exactly. That is also very suspicious. That is also very suspicious. To me, with the co-pilot, I think the co-pilot, was I think to me the co-pilot with him it's anyone's guess as to what happened. To explain that, maybe there was, like I was talking about earlier, there was hypoxia where there was a lack of oxygen. Could have been caused, both of them to go out, or maybe the pilot had brought something on board and had taken out the co-pilot and then brought it down, or they'd both been taken out by the hijackers. Combination of things. You see 60 Minutes Australia where the guy comes up with a new. Yeah, that's I watched that when it came out. I rewatched it yesterday to refresh, and that's Richard Godfrey. That's the guy who we're talking about, who came up with the Whisper radio network, and that's basically using the technology of ham radios, like which send out signals. Then when it finds another. It finds something else that's sending out a signal, like a plane or anything else, it'll bounce back and it'll send a longitude, latitude of exactly where that is. So based on and it was being mapped at the time of the flight, and they do this with lots of flights, basically every flight, and it it was logged. It's been done ever since 2009 when the thing was created. So luckily, it was mapping out the system, not the system, the path at the time of the flight after communication had ceased. So we have a good idea about where it crash landed. But honestly, it's anyone's guess at the end of the day. But what I think is the fact that they have the two independent sources, the Whisper Network and the US official government network, have come to this conclusion, and that the site hasn't been searched yet, it is astounding to me, but like I said earlier, there is a private firm that has pledged to redo the search in either later this year or early next year. So hopefully that can bear some answers for us. But hopefully it does. But you never know. Oceans Infinity is the company. They're a robotics company based in this country. Very, very good. A marine robotics company. They like make submersibles and things like that, submarines and stuff. So they'll be using a lot of their own gear to go down and have a look. And hopefully, like I say, hopefully they recover the black box. That's what I'm. Then that will give a real picture as to what actually happened. But it's like I said earlier, it's like trying to find a needle in a haystack. Such a big area and such a deep area. But hopefully, all there's so many interesting coincidences there, and to we have to take time to remember that there were all of these people had lives, and it's no matter what, something really terrible's happened, and we've got all these people have families, and you got to just think about. We've just got to take time to think about them and remember them, because I couldn't imagine, because I've been watching programs, documentaries on it ever since it happened, and you see the relatives of people who are on there, and just to not have that closure is, I couldn't imagine, it keep me up all night not knowing. At least, if you can have the body, you can bury them, you can have that closure, and start the grieving process without actually seeing it. Your mind isn't going to start the process yet, so you're going to be in that constant state of limbo. And I think that's worse than any kind of grief, to be honest with you, just not knowing. Couldn't imagine. But hopefully when they restart the searches, that they'll find some more stuff. And hopefully it's not a total whitewash, being that it's being done by a private firm and not the government. I actually have more faith in it. But we'll just have to wait and see. So I'm going to post the link again if anyone would like to come up before we finish. But it's been really, really good, and I really appreciate everyone being here. And next time I do a live, like I said, I'll probably do that mastermind theory kind of idea where we have people up to discuss like whatever's their expert topic of like whatever case is their best case, and based on that, we'll get them to submit it beforehand, and I'll write a load of questions, like 10, based on that topic. And if they get them all right, they get through to the next round, or they get whoever gets the most gets to a certain amount gets to the next round, and then we'll have like a final, and the winner will get a prize, and like it could be a variety of things. It's like for women, it could be a necklace. I've got a few pendants that like women could probably enjoy, and for the guys, let me think. Well, oh yeah, I could give you some beer. I could give you some Jack Daniels. I could give that to the women as well. I suppose I give the women wine and the men Jack Daniels. I think that's a good deal. Booze, and if you're not into booze, I'll get you some candy or something, like a Toblerone, big Toblerone, that you get in the airports. I think that's a nice prize, and I'll send it to you. So that sounds like a good idea. Hopefully, I might do that next live or the live after. There's a few other things I'd like to talk about in the next live. So do I. MJ, and so do I. It's one of them, like with Idaho. Uh, yeah, yeah. I'm not so keen on the Union Jack, but I'll give you a Star Spangled Banner. Or I do collect flags. I do have quite a few good flags. I could give you a flag of the Celtic nations, which is basically a flag. It's got like Ireland's flag, Scotland's flag, Wales's flag, the Isle of Man's flag, Brittany's flag, which is a part of France, and also Cornwall's flag. Cornwall is like this place just off the southern tip of the United Kingdom. It doesn't get spoken about very much, but it's a very nice place to go. Very supernatural place, Cornwall. It's probably the most haunted place in all of the UK. It's where all the ghost stories happen, all the legends. So I'd love to talk about the folklore of the UK and Celtic folklore really in general. But if you want a Union Jack, I could get you one. Yeah, Celtic flag cool. Yeah, I get you whatever anyone wants really in terms of flags. I'm very into flags. I've got loads, and but yeah, I think that's a good idea. I think it gets people involved and gets the viewers involved, and it means I don't have to do as much work entertaining you all on my own. I'm all for that. But I think today's been a really good success, and I'm kind of glad that I didn't drag it on too long. I think it's better that way. You keep it short and sweet. You stick to the point. You stick to the info. You don't, mess around with gossip and hearsay. You just kind of stick to what we have, and not mess around with any nonsense, because a lot of people do that, And I think some people have certainly, some have been saying in my comments that like they prefer this kind of way where I don't kind of mess around with nonsense. I just get to the point, get to the information I've got, and theorize about it. But I've really enjoyed it, and make sure, after we've done, which will be soon, to go and check out Melissa Jade's channel, and also to check out her live, which will be soon, trivia night, which is a great idea, I think, and it's just a fun time in general. I've really had a good time talking about this. I mean, it's a difficult case, but all the questions about it make me want to know about it more. The more questions it leaves me with, the more I want to know. And it's just one of them where it's like, with all the technology we have these days, we can still have instances where things completely miss us, and we're left with so many questions, and that's it's enjoyable for people like us to try and take on these immense challenges and hopefully find some information that can help point people in the right direction and give some closure to these families of these people who are victims of such a terrible thing. Whatever exactly happened, no matter what, it's horrible, like I said before, and we've got to remember them and hope that they get closure and justice. But that's basically all I have today, and I'd like to thank everyone who came in, and you're very much appreciated. And hopefully next time I'll do a longer live, and we'll talk about a lot of things. There'll be an open discussion involving just everything in general. I'll talk about the Idaho 4 next time, and do an in-depth of that and a few of the other current affairs. But I'd just like to say I hope everyone has a nice afternoon, and I hope that everyone has a nice day or night, depending on where you are. Good afternoon, good evening, and good night, as is said in The Truman Show, one of my favorite movies. Thank you, TF. I really appreciate it. I appreciate everyone who comes in here, and thanks everyone. You're all amazing, and I'll certainly link some of those documentaries about this, where I've got quite a lot of this information from. If you want to check them out and know some more about this, because it's certainly a rabbit hole that I'm I've been fixed in ever since it happened, and it's a really interesting case. But goodbye, everyone. I hope you go into Melissa's trivia night later, because I will be in there. So it'll be nice to see you all, and take care. Goodbye.